Hi guys, in this video I give an introduction to methods. I start out by briefly explaining what a method is, then I demonstrate how to declare a method and how to implement a method. Then I show how to invoke and how to call a method and execute the statements inside a method. And finally I conclude the video by explaining why methods are useful. Let's start out with the first bullet. What are methods? A method is essentially a self-contained block of code. So it is a sequence of statements that logically belong together. And in our program, we can execute the sequence of statements wherever we like without copying and pasting that block of code multiple times. Now a method can also expect input, so we can pass in data to a method, and it can return something. It has output in terms of a return value. So we can pass information to a method and we can get information back. Let's move on to the second part. Method declaration. Method declaration simply means we're declaring a method, we're defining a method. And the method declaration has multiple parts. At the bare minimum, there's a return type. A method has a name. Then there's open-close parentheses, and optionally one or multiple parameters. And then there's a code block. This code block is also referred to as the method body. Now, the parameters define the input, and the return type is essentially the output. Now, before I come up with a custom example of a method, let's take a look at the main. So specifically this part. The return type is void. Void means it doesn't return anything. It doesn't return. There's nothing to return. So we cannot get anything back from the main. The method name is called main. That's just an identifier, like a variable name. Always follow camel case for method names, starting with a lowercase character, and then every word, the very first character of every word is uppercased. And then this one here is the parameters for the main. So that's a string array. In my video on a basic Java program, I demonstrated how we can call this from a command line and pass information to it. So this is unique to the main. The parameters for a general method we always call from some other method somewhere else and pass information to it. Now let's take a closer look. Let's define a custom method here. So I use the return type void as well. I call this print hello, and then I do not have any parameters. So it's just open close parentheses. And then the method body. Now in the body I can write multiple statements. I can really program anything I want to. There's no limit to it. Just like I can write something in the main. So I write hello as one statement. Forgot the out here. And then another statement, system out print line. How are you? This is called from a method. So I have multiple statements, just to demonstrate that there can be really anything and multiple statements inside the method. So whenever I want to greet somebody, I want to output hello, how are you? This is called from a method. So this is the method declaration, and then here we have the implementation, the body. Now how can we execute this code? So if I run the program right now, it terminated, there was no output. It simply executed whatever is in the main. And there was nothing in the main, so the program ended. So just having a method by itself, it's just dead code. It is never executed. We have to invoke the method. Now let's output just a simple statement here, before, and then I call the method. And calling a method is just typing in the name, hello, open close parentheses. Doesn't expect anything as input. Now I get an error. cannot make static reference to the non-static method print hello. So when you see this, you are missing the static keyword here. I don't go over the access modifier like public. This is really an object-oriented concept, which I cover in a separate video. Static, to briefly explain why you need static. Static means that the method belongs to the class. And any static method I can call without having an object. So I can call it from another static context, such as the main. I don't need to create an object of this class here. I can just call the method by itself. So whenever you start out writing methods, before you want to deal with objects, just declare them as static. So simply put a static in front. So now this error went away, and then I put something after. So before and after is basically the program that executes in the main, calls the method, and then it continues in the main. So let's run this again. And here we can see it outputted before, then it went to the method, executed all the statements in the method, then returned and continued in the main. Now what if I want to execute this 3 times? I simply call this multiple times. So I print hello second time, and I call print hello the 3rd time. Now when I run this, the output here is basically 3 times. Before, then it called the method once, twice, and here the 3rd time. And after each time, it came back to the main. So if I wanted to, for example, have a different order, I can just call it in my program wherever I need to execute it. I could do it right in the beginning, run something in the main, and continue with the other methods. Now that you know what a method is, how to declare a method, and how to invoke a method, let's move on to the last part. Why are methods useful? So first of all, they are very useful if we have some chunk of code that we want to have multiple times. So instead of taking this code here and having it once up here and then copying and pasting it multiple times, we have a method and we simply call the method. So we don't have code duplication. So it helps to reuse code. Since we can reuse the code, it also helps maintainability. If I have a bug in my program here in one of these statements, let's say I wanted to have it uppercase, I simply do it once and it fixes it in all these 3 instances where I call the method. So there's only one place to fix it. It's always best to reduce duplicated code. And then another thing what's useful about methods is that we can break a very large program down. If we just need to call it once, but our main, for example, is very, very long, like 100 lines, 200 lines, we can break it down into small parts. This prints the beginning of the program. Here I print a menu, I validate input. So it's much easier to read just a simple method call than analyzing individual statements. So it helps to organize the code as well. In another video, I go into parameters and the different return types and how to pass information to a method and how to get information back to a method. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.